Everyone, my name is Heather and I'm the person behind Happy Puppy Truffles. Today I wanted to share with you guys a fun little project that is actually not too hard, but allows you to make use of some fun papers that you might have lying around that you don't know what to do with. I always like making little books, notebooks and things like that with different papers that you might find. And it's a good way to use some scraps and maybe some harder paper that you have that's not so easy to fold, you can use as a cover. And it's a fun and cute kind of gift that you can give to people, especially around Valentine's Day. They can use it to start a novel in or take notes. You can use it as a diary that you trade back and forth with each other if you wanted to. Some fun ways that you can use it. So basically what I'm going to show you guys is the simple steps of what you need to do to get the paper put together, which isn't that hard, and then the main process of sewing the binding in. And this is a really old school kind of way of putting together a book, and you can use it in so many different ways. You can make it any size you want. You can use any kind of paper. I've used some more like scrapbooking paper for the cover for this one, and then just really nice handmade paper with the nice fibers and little heart flecks in it for Valentine's Day. And then this one, I just used this nice textured origami paper that I have that I was always having such a hard time deciding what to use it for because it's so pretty. And then on the inside, I used some classic kind of origami paper that has those nice fibers of gold and silver in there. And I alternated between white and green. Now, of course, the back and underside doesn't have the flecks. It's got a different texture to it. So it kind of creates a cool little notebook design. And I thought I'd just show you guys today how to put one together just using some regular paper. And for the cover, I'm going to be using some that scrapbooking paper again. This is always nice paper to use because it's really nice and sturdy. Later on with some other videos, I'll show you guys how to take a piece of cardboard or thicker paper and then cover it with origami paper, for example, or other kinds of washi, and creating a really pretty kind of covered effect for that. But for this is just super simple. Find some paper that you've got lying around the house. It doesn't have to be a particular size. Obviously, you want it to be a little rectangular so that when you fold it in half, you can get kind of what you'd be familiar with as a book size. If you take, like I did with this one, this was just straight up origami paper, folded in half, you get this kind of nice billfold sort of style, or checkbook sort of effect. So if that's what you like, the longer, thinner style, it can work for that. This is great for, addresses and stuff like that, depending on what you might use it for. But this actually is B5 paper, and I've just cut, the scrapbooking paper to match, but then this is just regular printer paper. And I'd recommend usually for this kind of style to probably use between 6 and 8 sheets of paper. And it depends now on the kind of paper you're using. You sort of can get a feel for it when you look at this. This actually has 8 pieces of origami paper in it. And it does kind of pop up a little bit because there is quite a few, it creates quite a bit of thickness to it. You are just simply folding in half. And so you're going to get a little bit of a bulge from that. Whereas if you had like an actual, edge to it, you could have a lot more paper inside. This has 8, and it's the thinner paper, and so it lays nice and flat pretty easily. I'm going to show you guys here with the printer paper, just 6 pieces, because I think if we get to 8, it might be a little thick, but just to give you an idea of how it looks. But what you want to do is, with the papers that we're using, we're just going to fold them the way that we're going to make the book. And it helps to give the time to each individual piece and make sure you get a really good crease going on it to help it fold over. And when we're all done, we're going to probably want to do a little trimming of the edges, because what happens is you get all of these papers put together, you get an effect where the papers that are in the middle the most kind of stick out a little bit more than the ones on the outside. So, but we'll show you guys that when we get to that part. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through here. And when you do some binding techniques where you have more sheets of paper, there's a different way of doing it, and then you don't have to worry about so much trimming, but it requires a different approach. So just for this simple process, this kind of a way works best, I think. Now I'm making my cover and my pages the exact same size. If you prefer that look of where the outer part is a slight bit bigger, you could cut your paper to that depending on what you have. But there's certainly no rule of what size the paper can be. You can use whatever you happen to have on hand. And you could use, you know, old Starbucks bag for the cover. That would be really cute. If you happen to have some fun bags from the holidays, those are always good. Lots of different things you can use. Sometimes gift bags, you know, for that you can get for like Valentine's Day and stuff like that. You can cut them apart and use those too. That can be a fun way to reuse them. So I've talked my way through it. I went too far here. But basically, I've got my 6 sheets of paper here all folded in half and nicely creased. I then also folded my cover here, and I was just getting ready here with my ruler to really give myself a good crease on this because this is some nice thick paper. I'm just going to go right down it and make sure that it gets a good sharp crease, and that way it won't pop open. Now, there are fancy folding tools that you can buy at craft stores like Hobby Lobby. I don't know why you'd want to waste your money on those, but if you think you would like to have them, it's not like they don't not work. But, you know, rulers work good too, so. But I've got my crease going, and what we want to do is I'm going to take all of the sheets of paper that I put together here, and I'm just going to, you know, put them together. So I open one and slide one in, hold those 2 pieces together until I can get them all, you know, pieced together to create my book here. So I've got all 6 pages, and you can see even as we look at them now, you know, you can try really hard to get them all lined up, but they do just jut out just a tiny little bit there. Once we get it all finished and put together, if you want, you can trim that. So, and then I have the cover here. Now, if we kind of look at things here, we've got our cover, we've got the pages. We open things up for a second. What I want to do is on the inside here, I'm going to mark where I'm going to make the holes for when I create the binding. Now, this technique uses a simple stitch that allows you to basically put 4 holes in and create a simple stitch that will wind up matching and meeting up in the middle. So you get a cute little chance to put a little knot or a ribbon here if you prefer. And it's just a kind of fun symmetrical way of doing this. If you got something that's so much bigger than this, you might find that just 4 stitches is not, you know, the 4 holes is not going to be enough. You don't want your stitches to get too long because then they kind of look weird. But I've got my paper here, and I'm just going to take my ruler, and ideally you want to give yourself, you know, about 10 millimeters on the edge here from where your first hole is going to be. You don't want to give yourself too much space because then it kind of looks weird and it can almost even shift a little when you open things up. But you also don't want to make it too close to the edge either, because that's always tricky. You can accidentally tear the paper. So basically, my ruler is actually just a tad bit too, not quite big enough here. This is probably about 16 centimeters I'm looking at here. And I want to just go ahead and mark things off here where my center is. So I'm just going to give it right about, let's see here, make it at 8. I think that should be right. That's my center. Yeah, that's about right. And I say 4 stitches, but there's actually 5 dots, I should say, when you do this. So I put 1 on each end, 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter from the edge. I find my center, and then I'm going to find the center of this section and the center of the other section as well. And it's good to go ahead and just draw this in. Chances are with whatever you're using as your needle here, I'm making this darker so you guys can see it on the video, you probably won't really see these circles when you're done. Now, if it bothers you, what you can do is you can first poke the holes through, and then we can erase these so that we don't see them anymore when you're finished. Now, you do need some thread, and you can choose what kind of thread you want to use. I like, you know, using some embroidery thread because that shows and you can see it better on the binding. If you want it to be more invisible, you'd pick something that matches more directly to the colors that you're using. You can deliberately use other textures and other colors You can use ribbon, you can use gold thread, you can use a really pliable wire even. So many different things you could do if you're interested in it. The technique is just though to get the hole going through so that you can have some success. I would recommend making sure that you've got, you know, a nice, fairly long and sharp needle because you want to be able to go through things. And you can choose if you want to do a light little tiny knot here to kind of keep everything together, because there's nothing worse than when you're trying to go through and then you know, unthread your needle. But basically what we want to do is kind of keeping everything together here, and you can kind of make sure it's all together by folding it in half and pushing through here, keeping it nice and tight. But what we want to do is I'm just going to put some preliminary holes by just poking through where the dot is, keeping things together. And you want to, of course, try to make it so that your needle comes through right at that crease as much as you can. That's the ideal place for it to be. And I'm not going to go all the way through. I'm just going to make my hole here. And I'm going to do that for the remaining other 4 dots so that I can get kind of the beginnings of where my creases are going, where my holes are going to be. And, you know, this works really good if you're going to be using a different kind of material, like a ribbon, for example. You'd probably want to use a really thick, sharp needle. That could create a bigger hole, or a needle that's sharp on one end and has a really big eye. That can also help a lot to get you the kind of larger hole that you might need then to guide through some other kinds of materials there, if that's something you're doing. And you can pop it through there using a thimble if you need to. But we just want to get the beginnings of stuff here so that it's a little easier when we actually start sewing it all together. So I've got all those basic holes started, and what we want to do is I'm going to start off with the inside of my book, and I'm going to feed through here in the middle, and I'm going to pull it almost all the way through. You want to have about maybe 5 centimeters at least of string left, and it depends on how you want to tie things off. If you want to put a you know, a little bow kind of tie section in here, you can do that if you prefer. I think it does sometimes kind of get in the way of folding everything down. I just prefer to just tie it and leave a little bit at the end so that it can kind of hide and tuck into the inside, in this crease in the middle. But I'm going to give myself a little more than I need to. This is more than I probably need, but make sure you give yourself a little extra space there. And then I'm just going to go straight from there to this next spot. So coming over just the closest hole for there, bringing it through. So I have something like this. And then I'm going to go over here to the right again. So this is just a basic up and under stitch going here. And I'm just going to go straight back through the holes I've already made, so that I wind up with something like this. I have one nice stitch here and one stitch over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and take and come backwards right through here. And when you do this, you do want to try to eliminate, you know, getting stuck on whatever you're using, whether it's string or ribbon. You don't want to get it, you know, so that it goes between the fibers. You know, for example, this embroidery string is made up of actually 5 or 6 pieces of string wrapped together, and the better you can keep it so that it's a clean entry there at the hole, then the nicer it's going to look. So that's a pretty basic in, up, down, up kind of process. Now, the next little thing we're going to do as we go to the left is I'm actually going to jump over the middle and go over to this stitch hole here. And I'm going to just go through here. And that's the longest stitch you're going to make here. This is the only one where you're going to double it up. And then from the back side looking, I'm going to go over here to the far left and go through the hole I have. make sure it doesn't knot on you like mine was there. And then I'm going to go back through here, and again on this one you want to try to eliminate the chance of where you can accidentally, snag on any of the layers of the thread. Pull that through. So the inside's looking good. In the back side we just have one more stitch. I just need to go back to the center here. And making sure that I'm not snagging on anything. And as you come through here, you want to try to watch it as we do this, because what I like to do is try to have that beginning stitch string facing down, and I want to let this piece that I have threaded here, I want to actually come up on top of that. And that way, when I come all the way through, I have one string on top up here and one down below. And that will give you then the chance when you tie off here to create the illusion that you have stitch here when you actually just have one long stitch. So that's the end of the line here. And then we can just tie this off. And like I said, it's up to you guys if you want this to be, a ribbon or a different kind of thing. If you want to tie it and put a little charm at the bottom, you could do that too. There's lots of fun different ways you could decorate it, but I'm just going to do the basic thing here, tying it off. And you see how by doing that I kind of almost create that illusion that I actually went through there, even though this was just a really super long stitch here in the middle. So I've got that, and then I'm just going to trim this, and you could choose how long you want it to be. I think it helps to have it be a little long, because then it can kind of lay down nicely without getting in the way. For some reason my scissors are not cutting very well today. But you can see how you can kind of allow it to lay pretty flat then when you're done. And when things close up, you should have a very nice, clean, completed edge to your notebook. And you can smooth it out with the ruler if you want a little bit too. But you should have a nice, completed book with the binding here along the edge. And when you open it up, of course, to the middle, you'll have the binding showing there in the middle. But any other page, you'll just have a book with regular binding notches there that you might see normally. Now, at this point, this is kind of up to you guys, depending on your paper that you were using. I know, for example, when I used the origami paper, it was a little thicker than my printer paper, and it had a tendency to stick out even a little more than I was expecting it to here, and I used 8 sheets too. So I did trim just a little on this edge. You don't need to trim up here. That should line up pretty nicely. And this here, it does stick out just a tiny bit. And if you do have the preference of wanting to kind of trim it, you do want to kind of make sure that everything is as flat as it can be. And then we're just going to take some good scissors and try to work along here and to see how much of this edge you can clean up a little bit by just cutting along here and giving it a little bit of a less part that's sticking out there then, and making it look a little nicer and finished off when you're done. So many fun ways that you could use this. Take your favorite paper, favorite bag from your favorite place that you like to shop or eat. So many different fun things that you could do. You could use maps. I think that's always, I love maps. Maps are so cool. You could use them as, the outer part of your notebook if you wanted to. I mean, who uses real maps anymore, right? But maybe you've got one sitting in the glove compartment of your car. Take that puppy out and use that to make a notebook. And then you can have some fun, cool looking little gift that you can put together pretty quickly. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it looks really cool. And of course, people love getting gifts that are handmade. So it's something to kind of consider for Valentine's Day, and of course any of the holidays coming up later on down the road, Mother's Day, Father's Day, those kinds of things, graduation and stuff. So I'll have some more fun things to share with you guys in the days to come. Thanks again always so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!